Absolute pitch-black darkness in an unknown subterranean facility is an assault on the human psyche. It strips away all logic, leaving only a primal instinct to survive. Caleb and Nora stood completely frozen in the center of the massive, decaying barracks, their eyes straining against a void so thick it felt like a physical weight pressing against their chests. The suffocating silence of the bunker had returned, heavy and oppressive, making the frantic pounding of their own hearts feel deafening in the dark. The air down here was stale, tasting of iron-cold dust and decades of forgotten decay. "Nora, reach out. Grab my hand and do not let go for a single second," Caleb whispered. His voice was barely a breath, shaking as he reached out blindly. Nora forced her trembling fingers through the impenetrable darkness until they brushed against his heavy jacket, gripping it with desperate force. Relying solely on the weak green glow of a cracked chemical light, they slowly moved out of the barracks into a massive industrial cavern. Before them stretched an incredibly narrow, heavily rusted metal catwalk suspended over a pitch-black abyss. The sheer scale of the underground chasm was impossible to measure in the dark, but a cold, unnatural draft howled up from the invisible depths, carrying the faint, metallic scent of stagnant water and old oil. "We have to cross," Caleb muttered, his eyes tracing the fragile iron supports that vanished into the darkness ahead. Nora hesitated, looking over the edge into nothingness. Her legs felt heavy, paralyzed by the primal fear of the unseen drop below. Every single movement onto the bridge was a terrifying gamble. The ancient iron grating groaned and shrieked in protest under their boots, the sound echoing endlessly into the void. Flakes of rust broke off and fell into the abyss, and they waited in terrifying silence to hear them hit the bottom. But the sound never came. They were forced to place one foot in front of the other with excruciating care, knowing a fractured beam could send them plummeting. They had just reached the exact center of the rusted catwalk when the dead silence was broken. The cold, mechanical hiss of an ancient PA system crackled to life, echoing off the distant cavern walls like a ghost waking up. The synthesized, distorted voice of the unseen architect spoke, vibrating through the cold metal beneath their feet. "True survival," the voice whispered, calm and utterly devoid of humanity, "is not a matter of physical endurance. It requires a horrific sacrifice. You must shed your deep emotional bonds to be reborn in the dark." The emotionless delivery of those words chilled Nora to the bone. She tightened her grip on Caleb's hand. The speakers cut out with a sharp click. For a fraction of a second, there was dead, suffocating silence. Then a massive explosive charge detonated directly behind them, turning the cavern entirely white with a blinding flash that erased all shadows. A deafening shockwave tore through the cavern, instantly shattering the heavy iron supports of the catwalk. Time seemed to slow down to a crawl as the terrifying sound of tearing metal ripped through the air. The bridge snapped violently in half, dropping the entire central section straight into the void. The sheer force of the blast threw them in opposite directions, ripping their hands apart. Nora screamed, a raw, visceral sound of pure terror, as the rusted metal completely vanished from underneath her boots. She plummeted into the pitch-black abyss, completely untethered. The freezing wind of the drop rushed past her ears, drowning out Caleb's shouts. She was surrounded by falling debris, twisting helplessly in the dark, bracing her body for the absolute end, waiting for the crushing impact that would take her life. 20 feet below the destroyed catwalk, a massive rusted industrial ventilation pipe spanned across the chasm like a steel vein. Nora crashed into the curved metal surface with a sickening thud. The immense impact knocked all the oxygen from her lungs in a violent rush, cracking her ribs against the unyielding steel. She gasped silently, her vision blurring with tears and pain. She barely managed to wrap her bruised arms around the thick pipe, sliding dangerously close to the slippery edge. For several terrifying minutes, she simply clung to the freezing metal, her cheek pressed against the rust, gasping desperately for air that wouldn't come. "Nora, make a sound." Caleb's desperate voice echoed from the broken edge of the catwalk above. He was stranded on the surviving section of the bridge, staring down into the impenetrable blackness, having absolutely no logical way to reach her safely across the empty space. "I am alive," Nora screamed back, sobbing uncontrollably, the adrenaline masking the agonizing pain in her chest. "I am down here." I landed on a massive pipe. Caleb frantically swept his dying flashlight over the gap, but the weak beam failed to pierce the thick shadows that swallowed her. "Hold on! Do not move!" Caleb shouted, his voice cracking as he smashed his heavy crowbar against the broken steel railing in helpless frustration. He was trapped. There was an open industrial ventilation tunnel attached directly to this pipe. Nora yelled over the echoing darkness, her voice shaking. "It goes deep into the concrete wall. I have to crawl inside it." Caleb closed his eyes, the heavy realization setting in that he couldn't protect her anymore. "Go into the tunnel, Nora. Follow it to the end. I will find another way down, I swear to you. Just do not stop moving." Taking a deep, painful breath, Nora dragged her battered body forward, inching her way inside the shaft. She crawled on her stomach through the incredibly tight metal tube. The fading green glow of her chemical light was her only companion, casting sick, unnatural shadows ahead. The heavy, suffocating metal walls pressed tightly against her shoulders, restricting her breathing even more than her cracked ribs. The sound of her own ragged breath and the harsh scraping of her boots against the rust amplified in the confined space, triggering overwhelming waves of intense claustrophobia. The air was stale and hot in here. It felt exactly like crawling through an endless, slowly shrinking metal coffin. 10 agonizing minutes later, the air suddenly shifted. The narrow tunnel abruptly ended. She scrambled forward blindly and tumbled out of the shaft. She dropped heavily onto a spotless, brightly lit white tile floor. The sudden harsh surgical brightness was blinding after spending hours trapped in the absolute dark. Nora gasped, curling into a ball and shielding her burning eyes with her dirty hands. This wasn't a decaying bunker anymore. It was a sterile, pristine, modern concrete room that looked exactly like an underground operating theater. The smell of bleach replaced the smell of rust. As her vision slowly adjusted to the glaring lights, a heavy shadow detached itself from the corner of the room. A tall, imposing figure wearing heavy tactical armor and a featureless black carbon fiber ballistic mask stepped slowly and deliberately into the light. The heavy tread of his boots echoed on the tiles as he blocked the only heavy steel exit door. He didn't speak. He just watched her from behind the dark visor. The architect had finally revealed himself.